200 billion stars, trillions of planets, 14 billion years, and nobody. Not one signal, not one visit, not one hello. You've heard people guess why. They're too far away. They're not interested. We're not looking hard enough. Those aren't answers. Those are excuses. The real answer, it's written in the silence itself, and it should terrify you. So tonight, go outside, find a dark patch of sky, and just listen. Not with your ears, of course, with your attention, with that quiet part of you that wonders. Plenty of time out there for someone to notice us, to reach out, to arrive, and yet, silence. Everyone talks about what happens when aliens arrive. Movies imagine the ships descending. Governments draft protocols. Scientists dream of first contact, but they skip the real question, the one that should unsettle you far more deeply. Why haven't they arrived already? When you understand the answer, truly understand it, you will never look at that silent sky the same way again. What I'm about to show you isn't about whether aliens exist. It's about what their silence has already told us. A physicist named Enrico Fermi asked this over lunch one afternoon in 1950. He looked at his colleagues, considered the numbers, and said, "Where is everybody?" The question sounds almost childish, but the mathematics behind it are devastating. Let me walk you through it. Remember those stars. Our galaxy contains hundreds of billions of them. Current estimates suggest most stars have planets, so perhaps 400 billion planets in our galaxy alone. Even if only a tiny fraction could support life, say 1 in a million, that still leaves 400,000 potentially habitable worlds. In one galaxy, and the universe contains at least 2 trillion galaxies. Now here's where it becomes strange. Our galaxy is roughly 13 billion years old. Our sun, our Earth, our entire solar system, we're relatively young. Only 4.5 billion years, which means there were stars forming, planets cooling, conditions stabilizing for billions of years before Earth even existed. If life emerges wherever conditions allow, and we have no reason to think Earth is special, then civilizations should have arisen long before us. Millions of years before us. Perhaps billions, even traveling slowly, at a fraction of light speed, using technology we can almost imagine today. A civilization could colonize the entire galaxy in a few million years. A blink, cosmically speaking. They should be everywhere by now. Their probe should have visited every star system. Their signals should fill the radio spectrum. 200 billion chances, 0 voices. That's not silence. That's a warning. We have listened, you understand. This is not for lack of trying. Since the 1960s, radio telescopes have scanned the skies, searching for patterns, signals that nature wouldn't produce. Mathematical sequences, structured pulses, anything that whispers, "We are here." In 1977, a telescope in Ohio detected something unusual, a signal so unexpected that the astronomer monitoring the data grabbed his pen and wrote one word in the margin. Wow! 72 seconds of something that didn't fit. A frequency hydrogen naturally emits, as if someone chose a channel the whole universe would recognize. It came from the direction of Sagittarius, and then taught nothing, never repeated, never explained. The silence resumed as if the universe had cleared its throat once, then thought better of speaking. Or rather, not quite silence. Not even an echo. Pure absence. As if something absorbs every voice before it reaches us. You see, this is the strangeness of our situation. We haven't merely failed to find aliens. We've failed to find them in a universe where the mathematics screams they should exist. This contradiction has a name, the Fermi paradox, and for decades it has haunted every serious attempt to understand our place in the cosmos. Some say perhaps life is simply rare. Perhaps the leap from chemistry to biology almost never happens. Perhaps Earth truly is extraordinary, a cosmic accident, unrepeatable. This would be comforting in a way. It would mean the silence is merely emptiness. Loneliness, yes, but not threat. But there's another possibility, one far less comforting. What if life isn't rare at all? What if civilizations arise constantly, all across the galaxy, reaching for the stars, just as we dream of doing? What if the silence exists, not because no one is out there, but because something happens to them before they can reach us? What if the silence is not absence, but aftermath? This is where the question stops being abstract. This is where it touches you, your life, your civilization, your future. And to understand what awaits, we must first understand what might be causing every voice to fall silent. The silence, you see, is not random. It has a shape, a pattern, and patterns demand explanation. Scientists who study this problem have given it a name: the Great Filter. Somewhere between dead chemistry and a galaxy-spanning civilization, something stops almost everyone. Some barrier so difficult, so deadly, that nearly every attempt to cross it fails. Curious, think of it this way. Imagine a road stretching from your front door to a city 1,000 miles away. Millions of travelers set out on this road throughout history. You can see their footprints at the beginning fading into the distance. But the city, empty. No one ever arrives, no matter how many set out. No matter how determined, no matter how clever, the city remains deserted. Now, either the road itself kills them somewhere along the way, or they never truly learn to travel it properly to begin with. This is the Great Filter, and here's why it matters to you personally. If the filter is behind us, if the hard part was something we've already survived, then we are extraordinarily rare. The silence would mean we're among the first, perhaps the first. Lonely, yes, but safe. But if the filter is ahead of us, then something awaits. Something that destroys civilizations precisely when they reach the point we're approaching now. The point where they can announce themselves. The point where they become visible. When scientists first grasped this implication fully, some hesitated to publish their findings. The logic felt too dark, too final. If the filter lies ahead, then our future is not the stars. Our future is the silence. We become another voice that started speaking and stopped. So which is it, behind us or ahead? Here's the uncomfortable truth. We don't know. We cannot know. Not yet. But there's one way we could find out. One discovery that would answer the question instantly. Finding alien life. No, let me be more precise. Finding simple alien life. Bacteria on Mars, microbes in the oceans of Europa. Anything that proves life arises easily, commonly, wherever conditions permit. You might think this would be wonderful news. Proof we're not alone. Cause for celebration. It would be terrifying, because if life is common, if it springs up everywhere, then the filter is not the origin of life. The filter is not behind us. The filter is something that happens later, something that catches civilizations after they develop, after they grow confident, after they begin reaching out. Every microbe we find on another world would be evidence that the silence ahead grows darker. Stay with me here. This is where it transforms from theory to something that touches your existence. There's another explanation for the silence, one that makes the Fermi paradox even more disturbing. It's sometimes called the dark forest theory. Imagine civilizations scattered across the galaxy like campfires in an endless night, each one burning alone, each one aware that others might exist. But here's the problem. They cannot know each other's intentions. They cannot verify whether another civilization is peaceful or hostile. And communication across stellar distances takes years, decades, centuries. By the time you learn what someone intends, it may already be too late. Now imagine yourself in this situation. You're alone in the forest at night. Absolute darkness. You know others are out there. You've seen distant lights flickering through the trees. Then you hear a twig snap. Footsteps. Someone approaching. Do you call out, or do you hold your breath, press yourself against the bark of a tree, and stay perfectly, desperately silent? We've been shouting into a forest where nothing shouts back. And physics makes this worse. This is where my own work becomes relevant. Relativity sets limits that no technology can overcome. Nothing travels faster than light. No message, no ship, no warning. The universe enforces patience, and patience across these distances becomes indistinguishable from blindness. What I mean is, You cannot negotiate in real time with a civilization 40 light years away. You cannot build trust through conversation when each exchange takes a human lifetime. You cannot verify intentions. You can only guess. And the cost of guessing wrong is annihilation. In such a universe, the rational strategy might be silence. Permanent, disciplined, absolute silence. Not because there's no one out there, but because everyone out there understands the danger of being heard. Strange. We sent a greeting before asking why no one else had. In 1977, the same year as the WOW signal, we launched 2 spacecraft, Voyager 1 and Voyager 2. Golden records attached to their sides. Music, greetings in 55 languages, mathematical diagrams, and most remarkably, a map showing exactly where Earth is located, relative to 14 pulsars. A permanent return address hurtling into the void. Voyager 1 is now 15 billion miles from Earth, the farthest human-made object in existence. Still traveling, still carrying our hello. Some scientists called this reckless, a message we cannot take back, sent before we understood the weight of breaking silence. A beacon saying, here we are, here we are, here we are. Broadcasting forever into a forest where every shadow might contain something watching. So far, I've shown you possibilities, the filter that might await us, the forest that might surround us, theories about why the silence persists despite a universe that should overflow with voices. But now we turn to the question you actually came here to ask. The question in the title, the question that drove you to keep listening this long. What happens if, despite everything, they arrive? What does physics, what does reality itself tell us about contact? The answer isn't what the movies show you. It isn't invasion fleets or peaceful ambassadors or dramatic first conversations. It's stranger than that. And it changes everything. Because arrival, I must tell you, may not look like arrival at all. When you imagine aliens arriving, you imagine ships, something descending through clouds, beings emerging, a moment of contact, dramatic, visible, unmistakable. But consider what physics actually permits. A civilization millions of years more advanced than ours wouldn't need to send bodies across the void. Bodies are fragile. Bodies require life support, protection from radiation, impossible amounts of energy to accelerate and decelerate. Bodies are, frankly, inefficient. Information, however, travels at light speed. Probes can be small, the size of a grain of rice, perhaps smaller. Self-replicating machines could spread across a galaxy using materials they find along the way, copying themselves from star system to star system. No crew required, no life support, just patience and physics, which means arrival might not look like arrival at all. Let me put this differently. When a tsunami approaches shore, the water doesn't rush toward you first. It retreats. The ocean pulls back, exposing seafloor that hasn't seen air in centuries. If you don't know what you're looking at, you might walk out onto that empty sand. Curious, unaware. The arrival announces itself through absence, through something missing that should be there. What if we're standing on that empty beach right now? We search for signals, for structures, for obvious signs of intelligence. But a civilization with a million-year head start wouldn't necessarily build things we'd recognize as artificial. Their technology might be indistinguishable from natural phenomena. Their communications might use methods we haven't discovered yet. Their presence might be everywhere and invisible. Actually, here's a better way to see it. We assume arrival means our arrival. Ships coming here, beams visiting Earth. But what if we are the ones who arrive, not at a place, but at an understanding? What if the arrival isn't physical at all? What if the answer has been in front of us the entire time, written in the very silence we've been trying to explain? Consider the evidence. Civilizations arise. They must, given the numbers, across 13 billion years, across hundreds of billions of stars, intelligence emerges again and again. These civilizations develop technology. They reach the point where they can announce themselves to the cosmos. Radio signals, laser pulses, probes, messages. They reach outward, and then something happens. We see the result everywhere we look. Silence. Universal, consistent, unbroken silence. Not in one direction, not in one region of the galaxy. Everywhere. As if a rule applies, as if crossing a certain threshold triggers a consequence. Aliens haven't arrived because arrival ends civilizations. Let that settle. Not arrival of aliens. Arrival AS aliens. The moment you become capable of reaching out, of being heard, of being found, of making contact, you cross into danger. Perhaps you attract attention you cannot survive. Perhaps the technology required for cosmic communication inevitably becomes the technology of self-destruction. Perhaps expansion itself is a trap, and every civilization that attempts it triggers something we don't yet understand. The silence isn't mysterious. The silence is the answer. It tells us what happens to civilizations that announce themselves. They disappear, every single one. Feel the strangeness of that. The mathematics says intelligent life should be common. The evidence says no one survives long enough to reach us. The only conclusion that fits both facts. Something eliminates civilizations at precisely the stage we're entering now. The stage where we look up and wonder if we're alone. The stage where we send golden records into the darkness. The stage where we build bigger telescopes, more powerful transmitters, louder voices. This is why Einstein's physics matters here. Why relativity isn't merely a theory about space and time, but a constraint on survival itself. You cannot travel faster than light. You cannot send warnings faster than light. You cannot escape consequences faster than light. The universe has rules, and these rules apply to everyone, every species, every civilization, every intelligence that ever arose or ever will arise. No one gets exemptions. No one finds loopholes. If something hunts in the dark forest, you cannot outrun it. You can only avoid being seen. Think of it as a game where reaching the highest level triggers an automatic reset. Not because you failed, not because you made a mistake, because the game itself is designed that way. Advancement past a certain point ends the game. Always, for everyone, your intuition rebels at this. Good, it should. Intuition was built for survival on the African savanna, not for understanding cosmic timescales and existential filters. But the logic holds. Remember those 200 billion stars I mentioned? Each one an opportunity. Each one a chance for life, for intelligence, for curiosity, for dreams of reaching the stars. And each one, as far as our instruments can detect, silent. We've checked thousands of star systems directly. We've surveyed millions indirectly. We've listened across the entire electromagnetic spectrum. Nothing. That's not coincidence. Coincidence might explain one silent region, 10 silent star systems, perhaps even 100. But 200 billion? Silence everywhere we point our instruments, in every direction, at every frequency, across decades of searching? That's not bad luck. That's a pattern. That's the universe telling us something we don't want to hear. You're beginning to see it now, aren't you? The question was never, where is everybody? The question is, what silenced them? And the disturbing answer, the answer hiding in plain sight, is that reaching out might be what silences them. The very act we dream of, the contact we romanticize, the cosmic connection we yearn for, might be the trigger. I can show you the mathematics of this, the Drake equation, the Fermi estimates, the probability calculations. I cannot tell you with certainty why it happens. No one can, yet. But the pattern is unmistakable. Civilizations arise. Civilizations reach for the stars. Civilizations vanish. The silence remains, which leaves only one question. The question that transforms this from cosmic horror into something else entirely. If arrival ends civilizations, what do we do with that knowledge? Is the silence merely a warning of doom, or is it something else? And here, finally, is where the answer becomes not terrifying, but strangely beautiful. The silence, I'm suggesting, is not what we first assumed. We began thinking of it as absence, as loneliness, as something broken in the universe, a missing signal, a void where voices should be. We treated silence as failure. Failure to find, failure to connect, failure to prove we matter. But consider another view. When you walk into a cathedral and find it quiet, That quiet isn't emptiness. It's reverence. It's the accumulated weight of everyone who entered before you and understood that some spaces demand stillness. The silence isn't absence of sound, it's presence of understanding. What if the cosmic silence works the same way? Civilizations arise, they develop, they reach the threshold where they could announce themselves, send their signals, light up the sky with proof of their existence. And the wisest among them, the ones who survive, look at the silence surrounding them and understand what it means. Not, there's no one out there. Rather, those who shout, vanish, those who listen, endure. The silence isn't a graveyard, it's a library. Every absent signal is a lesson preserved across billions of years. Every empty frequency is a warning passed down without words. The universe has been teaching us since before we had instruments to notice. We simply weren't ready to understand the curriculum. This is how science actually works, you see. Not just discovering answers, but discovering that the questions themselves were incomplete. We asked, "Where is everyone?" As if the absence of response meant absence of life. The better question, the question hidden inside the silence all along, was, why is staying quiet the only strategy that survives? No, not the only strategy. Perhaps silence is the survival strategy. Perhaps civilizations that endure are those that learn to grow inward rather than outward, to develop depth rather than reach, to become something magnificent without becoming something loud. Think about what this means for humanity. We stand at a threshold right now, this very moment. We're developing the technology to truly announce ourselves. More powerful radio transmitters, laser arrays capable of signaling across light years, plans for interstellar probes. We're preparing to shout louder than we've ever shouted before. And somewhere, 15 billion miles away, that golden record keeps traveling. Our permanent hello, our return address, etched in metal and mathematics. Sent in 1977, before we understood what the silence was trying to tell us. In 40,000 years, Voyager will drift close to another star. If anything finds it, anything patient enough to wait, anything watching for exactly this kind of signal, they'll know we exist. They'll know where we are. They'll know we were naive enough to announce ourselves. 40,000 years. A blink cosmically. A message we cannot recall. We cannot undo what we've already sent into the darkness, but we can choose what we send next. We can choose whether we understand the lesson the universe has written in silence across every corner of the sky. This is the arrival, you see, not ships descending, not beings emerging from craft. The arrival is understanding. The arrival is finally hearing what the silence has been saying since before our species existed. The silence isn't empty. It's full of information. It's 200 billion stars telling the same story without speaking a word. Absence of evidence, when evidence should be everywhere, is evidence. Evidence of what happens to those who don't learn to be quiet. So what happens when aliens arrive? Perhaps they never arrive in the way we imagined. Perhaps arrival itself is the trap, the moment of reaching out, of being seen, of contact, and every civilization faces the same choice we face now. Announce yourself and vanish, or listen to the silence and understand. The universe, I think, is not cruel. It's not hunting us. It's simply structured with certain rules, and one of those rules seems to be expansion without wisdom ends. Technology without restraint ends. Ambition without understanding ends. The silence is not punishment. The silence is the only possible outcome for civilizations that ignore what the silence teaches. You will walk outside tonight. Perhaps even after hearing this, you'll look up at those same stars, the ones that have watched silently since before Earth formed. And they will seem different now. Not empty, not lonely, full of civilizations who learned what we are only beginning to suspect. Full of wisdom passed down through the only channel that survives across cosmic time, silence. We have shown you what physics permits us to know. Why the universe enforces these rules. Why noise invites oblivion and stillness permits endurance. This we cannot yet say. Perhaps we never will. Some questions outlive everyone who asks them. That's not failure. That's honesty about the limits of knowledge. But one thing seems clear. The silence is not loneliness. It is inheritance. You began by imagining yourself outside at night, listening for a voice in that vast darkness. You wanted contact. You wanted proof that something else thinks and wonders and reaches toward the stars. Now you understand. The silence itself was the contact. The universe has been speaking all along through what it withholds. 200 billion stars, and every single one participating in the same conversation. A conversation conducted entirely in what isn't said. We are not alone. We are not abandoned. We are not floating through an empty cosmos, waiting for someone to acknowledge us. We are surrounded by wisdom so old and so universal that it doesn't require words. The cosmos answered. It said, listen. Those who reached out vanished. Those who listened remain. That is not tragedy. That is instruction, not emptiness, not abandonment, survival.